We also try to avoid asking customers, what do you want? Because we don't want them to define our features or capabilities. It's more like, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And we can help them get there.
Welcome to the Thrive Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Potter. I'm dedicated to helping founders and entrepreneurs along the path to success. Let's get started on that blueprint for success. Pete, as our episode kicks off, would you share a brief story about your background and your insights into tech sales and marketing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I live in San Diego. I've been there about 15 years, but I grew up in Rhode Island, and I was lucky enough to have AOL back in the day as a kid. You're probably familiar with it, but was obsessed with computers. So eventually went to college for computer engineering. I just love the creative aspect of it. You know, there isn't just one way to do things. You can kind of be creative in how you write software and code. My first job was in the Department of Defense with Raytheon, building the software for a destroyer, which, cool story, is now in the bay in San Diego. So I can see this giant destroyer ship that is probably still running code that I wrote 20 years ago. So, you know, if you ever see it crash, who knows? But that was the early days. Moved out to San Diego to work at Northrop Grumman, which was aerospace. So building like the ground control stations for these large scale drones. Mostly unclassified things, some classified things. So that was a really cool experience. Then got the itch to be an entrepreneur and do startup things. So helped a team of guys work on an app that would translate Japanese, Chinese, and Korean to English with augmented reality right on your phone in real time. And this was probably 8 years ago. So Google wasn't doing it with Google Translate. And that was like my first time I dipped my toes in a startup. But I needed to replenish my bank account. So I went into Intuit, which is QuickBooks in financial industry. And kind of like along that path, my background isn't sales and marketing, but I do enjoy helping people. And really like my perspective of sales and marketing is to help people achieve their goals. And I don't think of it like I'm selling. I think of it like I'm providing information with marketing. Here's content information you need that could help you, even if you're not interested in data capable. Like here's stuff you might be interested in, and then provide more detailed information as they get more serious about buying. And sales is just understanding their perspective, seeing if I can help them or our products can help them, and the rest just kind of happens.
Terrific. Scott, first of all, I'd like you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for being here, Bill. It's a pleasure. Scott Goodwin. I'm a finance individual by trade or professional by trade, not necessarily sales and marketing foray, but fortunate enough to have seen a substantial number of interactions between marketing and sales teams throughout my corporate career, and excited to kind of share that knowledge base and maybe a little value add perspective to potential founders and entrepreneurs.
Terrific. Well, Scott, coming from a financial perspective, can you shed light on a particular marketing strategy that had a pronounced impact on revenue of the companies that you've run?
Sure. So one example that comes to mind, particularly limited experience with startups from my standpoint as I experienced this, but the two groups individually from a sales and marketing perspective were essentially siloed at the beginning. They all had their different marching orders from the entrepreneur who was leading them. And they were really struggling as they got initial liftoff. They became somewhat disjointed between the two teams. There was not a significant amount of quality content that was developed that was consistently translated onto the sales side and shared with the customers. And we took a step back, forged those two together. We put them under the same leadership team, same program. We developed a strategy that crossed both groups. Spent a lot of time, workshops, happy hours, et cetera, just trying to bring the teams together and collaborate. After about 6 months to a year of, kind of forcing the integration, so to speak, of their mindsets, it forged an opportunity where they developed some successful go-to-market approaches from the beginning stages with the marketing group all the way to the day-to-day front line with the customers and selling the product. So that was very interesting to experience, and tremendous growth as a result of that.
I'm curious, how big was the team?
So there was about 3 or 4 folks on the marketing side, and then the sales team was a little smaller. It was about 3 main sales individuals. There was one where we really saw the benefit was on the enterprise kind of clients, the bigger ticket clients that we wanted to deliver a quality product. There was a lot of challenges, navigating the corporate interlockings of the office and getting in front of the right people. So the marketing team forged the opportunity. That content and messaging really resonated with some of the folks, particularly in the C-suite, and that individual was able to kind of catapult into the business, into their customers, and move from there.
Yeah, there's a couple pieces there. I believe marketing should have a seat at the table with the CEO, and I think some organizations, maybe at a certain scale, there becomes like this intermediary, like CRO. But I think marketing is such a significant piece of the business. They should have direct access to the person creating the vision and the strategy and the goals, and not be like buried behind another executive. And we're not that big yet. So that's my belief now. We haven't been through that struggle, but it's been really great to have like that marketing role reporting directly to me in the past.
Right.
Well,
go ahead.
Bill. Do you see yourself as kind of that? In my example, what I saw was it took the one leader above both organizations to really drive them. I think there was creative and thoughtful people, right, that needed a streamlined approach together to advance the ball. Yeah. So do you visualize yourself as that catalyst between marketing and sales?
Yeah, kind of setting the strategy in the vision. But I do think it's important to keep sales and marketing separate. Like, they're 2 different things, and there should be somebody responsible and accountable for each separately. I don't think they should be merged together. I think it gets messy and the goals aren't clearly identified. So separate, but still aligned, which is not easy. I would say it's probably never been perfected, but I think that's important. And my job is to help grease the wheels along with our COO, Kevin Peterson, to kind of glue it all together, like cross-functional, not only sales and marketing, but align with development, operations, finance, all those key functional orgs of a business.
Yeah, Pete, I don't think I gave you the opportunity to introduce yourself. You're CEO of Data Capable. It is I'll let you explain the product orientation, but you support enterprise and other sized utilities in the electric utility space. I've come to admire some of your products. So can you give us a brief background on Data Capable?
Yeah, sure. We started Data Capable back in 2015 officially, but 2012 is when we had the idea. And it came about during Superstorm Sandy that hit the East Coast and devastated the entire East Coast. Even Manhattan lost power. There's a famous picture of Manhattan not having any lights, which was really weird. But we realized at the time there's a lot of information available on social media or on the internet, and some utilities weren't using that information like they could. So we realized we can create some algorithms to find this information and deliver this situational awareness in real time to them when they need it. And that would prevent them from sending a truck out to see what happened to a power pole, because there's a picture of it already. So they can just send the truck they need right off the bat. That kind of evolved to more than just power outage related, more than just utilities, but delivering situational awareness when it matters most is our mission. And so what year is this now? 2023, 10 years later, we've come a long way, and have gone through a lot of challenges, learned a lot of things, Like I mentioned, sales and marketing isn't my background, but I have become a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Well, I've worked with many marketing professionals who've navigated, the diverse world of startups and industry giants. Given the contrasting world of tech startups and my experience with industry giants, how do you feel that their sales and marketing approaches differ, in your view?
Yeah, the big tech giants, when I worked at Intuit, every year they run a Super Bowl commercial, which is awesome to see as an employee. It's something I'm proud of. And they spent so much money on that, minute video, on the slot, and then so much money on the production that goes into it. And they have the budget to support it. So it's, I don't want to say easy, but like they have huge budgets and they can make it happen. They have the team, they're organized, they really understand their mission, but they're appealing to a wide audience. In most startups typically have a niche, at least to start. And so your target audience is really unique and defined, or it should be at least. And you either don't have a marketing budget or it's very small. So you need to be creative in the way you target your audience. And that can come in a lot of flavors. Social media, just guerrilla marketing, maybe being outside, doing things, email, phone calls, cold emails, every angle, just marketing at your audience and knowing where they're consuming content is the important thing. So having that deep knowledge of who they are and what they're looking for in their goals creates a different challenge for small companies versus these big giants that have kind of figured it out. They're slow to adapt to new technology and shift, but they've got a formula that they know works, and they just like dump more money into it and see the results.
I see. As I was running message broadcast for a number of years, and that experience I bring into Thrive Advisors, one of the sales strategies that we use, but it really was marketing first, because the marketing is generating the leads, but marketing has to listen to clients. I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yeah.
And a real pivotal time at Message Broadcast was during our inception, when we were serving a wide variety of industries. And it wasn't until years later that we focused on the utility industry. But what we learned before going into the utility industry, because there was established CPaaS players in that space before we showed up, was that we were working in telecom, banking, retail, and what we learned was really pivotal, that marketing is tightly connected to sales in one sense, that at first you listen to the clients. What is their pain point? What are their needs? And we never built a product in an ivory tower and then tried to sell it to the utility industry. We went in there with the diverse background we had from multiple industries and understanding customer engagement, communication solutions. But by listening to them, we actually built our products custom made to the utility industry. And then because the utility industry is mainly a monopoly, that good news traveled fast. And that really helped us scale our revenue significantly. In the time that you've led Data Capable, has that been your approach?
Yeah, and like I said, my background isn't sales, and my co-founder, Zach Kanders, it's been founder-led growth since the beginning. And I think what drives most of that is having that deep knowledge of the customer base, this like niche area that you start in, but also just the passion and the excitement and the dedication to it goes a really long way. And something I meant to mention before, so we sell to enterprise customers, like I would consider the large utilities enterprise customers, like enterprise level, which brings typically a higher price tag per license. We typically sell like a 1-year license, but it costs more. And that changes the strategy you need in your sales approach as well. So it's really relationship focused, building and nurturing relationships. I always think of a comparison to somebody that's selling a vacuum door to door. And it's like, maybe you need a vacuum, but it's not, you don't like the person selling it. And it doesn't really matter to you because you get that instant value. You know you're never going to have to talk to that person again. So yeah, just like, I'll buy it. Like, see you later. Never see them again. But when it's a purchase that's this enterprise level and a higher price tag, they're in it for the relationship as well. And that's a big part of it.
Good. Scott, from your experience, what are the consequences when sales and marketing teams aren't aligned?
Well, number one, as a finance professional, it can be very costly to an organization. You can certainly not meet your strategic plan and your goals around customer acquisition, and then to the point that Pete just made around the larger customers, they need a little TLC from time to time, more so than your individual consumer, perhaps. So it depends on your product when it comes to what's the right strategy and focus. But failing to develop a unification between sales and marketing that is soup to nuts, right? How do we acquire Bill Potter, right? How do we keep Bill Potter happy, and how do we maximize the connection and the profitability of our organization to assist Bill in his endeavors? If that end is not at the beginning stage, if the end is not in mind, and the full program is built appropriately, it can be very costly to an organization.
In short, chaos.
Absolutely. A lot of pointing fingers.
Exactly. Pete, in a tech startup world, what misconceptions have you observed about digital marketing and how they impact growth?
It's a really good question, especially as it relates to the utility industry. It's an industry that's, I wouldn't say known, but there's a lot of people, like an older generation that's still at the utility and they're nearing retirement or they're starting to retire. So there's a much different audience in these people that are part of our ideal client profile, ready to retire. They're not necessarily on social media. They're not necessarily watching YouTube or consuming all this digital content. But there's a newer generation that's kind of moving through these utilities that do. So the challenge for us is hitting all these different ICPs, ideal client profiles, in the channels we should be. And a common misconception is that marketing doesn't work for utilities. If you're marketing to utility companies, it doesn't work. And some marketing teams aren't seeing the return on investment, and so they just assume it doesn't work. My belief is you need to test and measure everything you do. And every time you run a test, you're improving on what you've done. So you're kind of validating it along the way, and you'll find a path to what works. Like, marketing works. No matter what industry you're in, it works. You just have to do it right and test and measure along the way to make sure it does.
Speaking of that, when you're testing and measuring, you have some really valuable products at Data Capable, Threat Detector, Community Portal, and the Outage Map. Outage Map is fairly obvious, but Threat Detector and Community Portal, how has your marketing research and your interaction with utility clients formed those products?
It's really important for us to spend a lot of time with the end user, really understand their goals and the value we can provide them. And that's our main focus, is providing value everywhere we can. In terms of when we sell it to them, it's first discovery. So like understanding what their needs are, what their situation is, then kind of evaluating the situation, seeing like, are we a good fit? Can we help somehow? Can we provide value? And then associating our solutions with their needs. And at that point, it's usually an obvious choice. We understand them, we can help them solve their problem, and it's a match made in heaven.
In your opinion, how would you advise a tech startup in terms of mastering those skills at sales and marketing? Based on your experience of, we all learn from mistakes, and successful companies stand on a mountain of mistakes, and so that they've learned from. What are some of the challenges if you were being asked by a startup what to focus on, what to avoid?
In the early days of the startup, I would say the first step is identify the roles you need, identify your vision, your mission, your values, really lock those in, then identify your ideal client. First, don't come up with a solution and find a problem that it solves. You need to experience the problem yourself and then create a solution. And that's when you actually have something worth investing your time. So once you have kind of these like foundational pieces, you can start to build out your team with people that align with your values and are motivated by your vision and have an expert in each of these. I think early on, you can probably blend together sales and marketing, but eventually I believe you need to separate those and have an expert in each. As you grow over time, you can start to hand off things. So as your team runs out of bandwidth, you can hire people to create more bandwidth for them. So start to break that out for them as well. And constantly staying up to date on the news and trends. So people that are obsessed with just like improving, learning more, and like I mentioned before, testing. So any marketing, any sales, you need to be measuring every step along the way.
Okay. Scott, at your company, how instrumental is harmonizing sales and marketing in the setting of a tech company's direction? In terms of your hands-on experience with your organizations.
Well, I think it begins. We've talked about a lot, right? The customer interaction, the voice of the customer, that communication coming back from the sales team or the marketing team to the product development group. And steering them in a clear and concise direction is important, not only from the financial aspect of the investment that needs to be made in developing that product, but also ensuring that it entails or encompasses what the customer is really asking for, right? And if it's threat detection, it's threat detection. And using Pete's example, if it's an outage map that is critical at the first 5 or 10 minutes versus what's possibly coming next with threat detection. So really understanding what your customer's challenge is, and that value is brought back from the sales team and the marketing team, and then clearly aligning the product development team to ensure they're delivering that type of spec and ultimately end product or service to the customer.
Yeah, that customer-centric perspective is really important across all organizations, sales and marketing, engineering, everything else. It's all about the customer, and it's easy to get stuck in that trap of, well, we think they could use this button, so let's add this button. Well, let's add this other one. All of a sudden you have this like Frankenstein app that's really confusing, and it's partly because you don't know who you're targeting and you're not using their perspective in mind creating these things, and it gets out of control.
And I would add to that too. That's why I think it's imperative, back to the original point, sales and marketing, is asking the question 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 different ways to truly make sure you're understanding what it is exactly that the customer's seeking in a deliverable.
And sorry, one more thing, and that's kind of our job as vendors to utilities or entrepreneurs or startups is we're experts in the field. And if we understand the challenge they're facing and their goals, we can come up with unique, innovative ideas that they might not even be considering.
Absolutely.
And there's that famous quote, Henry Ford, if you asked what his customers wanted, they want a faster horse. But it's like they're just not even thinking of what you might be thinking of as an expert.
When you created Threat Detector, for utilities to keep crews safe from critical weather events and other disturbances. Obviously you brought all that experience to creating that product that maybe these utilities weren't really thinking about. But how did interacting with those utilities evolve that product from your original conception?
Yeah, great question. So we spent a lot of time at conferences, networking, trade shows, learning from experts in the field as well, sharing information, also giving presentations as an expert in helping them, but being part of that community to really understand their challenges and needs and hear those firsthand stories has been helpful. It is difficult to get time with the end user, and sometimes the person who is signing the checks isn't the end user. So they have a slightly different perspective than the actual users at the end of the day. So maximizing as much time as we can, ask our customers of understanding how we provide value to them, how they use the tool without asking too much. That's always a tough balance. We have a dedicated customer success team in person on our team because we really value the customer's opinion. And I forgot where else I was going with that.
Well, at my previous company, Message Broadcast, we have and currently continue to have roundtables at conferences. Conferences are essential because it's the gathering of leaders from diverse areas of the country, but they all share common challenges of engaging the customer, proactively informing the customer. But we felt that it was necessary to bring together leadership from all these utilities, large and small, and hear what their common problems were. So that had a direct influence on how we, innovation is key in technology, but we're always challenged by the fact that, well, we're serving our clients and we've got to maintain that high availability and reliability and resiliency. But and so we're always balancing innovation with maintaining our support for our clients. But I can tell you from a sales and marketing standpoint, so much of the marketing effort is really gleaned from understanding what, from those roundtables, the feedback that we're getting from the industry, and then we're tailoring it to that so that we bring the attention to the solutions that they're universally needing. I imagine that's, Scott, has that been your experience in your companies?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's the voice of the customer, right? What are they? What are their day-to-day challenges? And how can you solve for them as efficiently as possible, right? And let them understand and appreciate and experience the value add that your product is providing.
And on top of that, it's important to listen to your customers and ask them questions and learn and understand. But there is another opportunity with tracking usage as well. So like, what are they actually doing with the tools? And sometimes they say this is what they're doing, this is how they use it. But if you look at what they're doing, it might tell a different story. And if you've heard of Howard Stern, they used to send out surveys like, do you listen to Howard Stern? And everybody would say no on the survey. And then when they started using a different way to measure that, it turns out everybody was listening to them. They just didn't want to admit it. So there's sometimes a difference between what they say and what they're actually doing. And that's important too.
And that goes back to my point previously, right, is having an individual ask them the same question 3 different ways, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really going to triangulate what their critical issue is from a service delivery perspective on their side, right? So.
Yeah, and we also try to avoid asking customers, what do you want? Because we don't want them to define our features or capabilities. It's more like, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And we can help them get there.
Great. Well, in closing, any other points that you'd like to make to our audience?
I wanted to touch more on the struggles between sales and marketing. And there's always this tension between the two. A big place of tension is that handoff from a marketing lead to a sales qualified lead. And marketing's job is brand awareness, top of the funnel things, providing content to help people move to the next step, not necessarily push them to the next step in the funnel, but help them get there when they're ready. And if you don't have your ICP well defined and it's not aligned, you get that issue where marketing is just trying to generate MQLs, marketing qualified leads, and they might not be high enough quality for the sales team that wants to pick those up and run with it. So there's that balance and frustration that is the most difficult part, I would say.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to revisit before we close out is, and Pete alluded to this, is the channel from the marketing side of the house that is effective. Behind that is, and he just mentioned it as well, there's data, right? So your customer may say they want this product to do this, but your underlying data is telling you something completely different.
Right.
Same goes for addressing, from a marketing perspective, what is the right channel for your end user, right? We're in a unique world, tech's evolving. We still have individuals who rely on direct mail, which isn't very techy. We have individuals that rely on email solicitations or phone calls. We have that generation, and then we have a generation that relies solely on social media. So figuring out what channel, understanding and appreciating the data that's relaying to you is very similar to your business, just as much as it is to your customer's business.
Terrific. Well, in closing, thanks for joining the Thrive Podcast. If you found this episode valuable, please share, subscribe, and leave us a review. For all the tech founders out there, I encourage you to visit our website, thriveadvisors.com. Remember, most businesses encounter periods of stagnation. Thrive Advisors is here to create the right plan, set it in motion, and steer your success to a profitable exit. Until next time, thank you for joining our podcast.